Hello, guys. This is Brad with Ball Down South Sports Wave. We're going live today, and we're going to do a kind of a wrap-up show with over the weekend's games and this past week. And I'm trying to get somebody to come on with me. Hang on just a second. So yesterday, there he is. All right, so this is Brad again, and I've got Coleman Scott with me. He does his own podcast called Talkin Kentucky, and he is wanting to come on and kind of share some of his thoughts. Hey, Coleman, how are you? Can you hear me? There you are.
Can you hear me? Come on here.
I
Figure out
can.
this podbean technology, I guess, here. It took me a while, but
listen,
it looks like I'm on now.
I am too, actually. You're actually the first one that's joined that way, so I'm just trying to figure it out too.
Sorry for the delayed reaction there, but
No, it's
I'm on
okay.
here now. So,
I was trying to figure it out myself. We've done it, where I've done like sit down invites for like the people that are on with me, But this is the first time I've actually done it through the Podbean app. So I was trying to figure that out as well.
Well, hey, I think we're on here now, so I think we're rocking.
Right. All right. So I appreciate you being on with me today. Like I said, this is Coleman Scott from Talkin Kentucky. He has his own podcast, and if you have not watched or listened to his podcast, please do. They have a little humor and a little fun with their show. So, Coleman, explain your show just a little bit.
Yeah, well, I mean, it all started, well, I guess I should say that I'm a musician at heart. That's kind of like what I do. I'm actually in grad school right now for music. I'm getting my doctorate down at LSU. But a secondary passion of mine and something I've always kind of wanted to go in to, if I didn't go into music, was like sports broadcasting or sports journalism. So actually, when we lost to St. Peter's, when Kentucky lost to St. Peter's in the tournament, that kind of prompted me and my buddy, Caden Holmes, that I do the podcast with, to start something, because we always call after Kentucky games, and we always sort of, have our own little, private podcast, I guess, over the phone. So we're like, why don't we just make this a thing and, put it out there? So, we are serious sometimes. We do some kind of picks and, serious Kentucky news and things like that. But we also try to add a little humor and fun to it too. We do some stupid debates, like is a hot dog a sandwich, and we do some some brackets, we've done like a sports broadcasting funny moments bracket, and we've done a football coach post-game rants bracket and things like that. So we just try to mix it up and keep it entertaining at all times.
Right. Well, I appreciate you being on with me. And looks like John Roberts has joined us today as well. John, are you on?
I am.
All right. So John's joined us for the show some this past week, and he done the picks with us and stuff. We didn't do so well with those picks, did we, John?
I know I was probably somewhere like 50-50.
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly 100% how everything went.
All right, so Coleman, you're on. We'll do a little bit of this Kentucky game, and I've got a few things that I want to say, but I'll start with you. What did you think the way the game ended, and what are your thoughts on the game yesterday?
Man, it was one of those times where Kentucky snatch defeat from the jaws of victory again. It seems like I thought we were over that, but it definitely seemed like old Kentucky football for a minute, and I hate saying that, but that's certainly what it felt like at the end. It was one of those where if we had just straight up lost, like it would have been bad enough, but we had 2 chances to win, and it was like 2 opportunities where I thought we had basically won the game, like on Will Levis's first fumble. He got that first down. It was like an awesome play call and an awesome move by him. Then he fumbles and didn't think we would get the ball back, but then especially since we just had 2 timeouts, but then we stopped Ole Miss. We're able to get the ball back. Barryon Brown had that huge run.
Huge play.
I mean, that was just like, I thought he was actually going to go to the house there. But regardless, you get in scoring position. You have the opportunity to, even with the kicking woes that you were having that day, it would have been a chip shot field goal, even if you can't score there, right?
Which would tie the game up.
Which would tie the game.
Right.
And then, you have the Dane Key catch, which was just an unbelievable, that would have been on Sports Center Top 10. It would have been on the NFL thing, like you got mossed. Like it would have been on that. It would have been on all that kind of stuff. Like an unbelievable catch would have been one of the greatest like moments in UK history. And then, I'm going crazy. I'm just like lose my mind. And then there's the illegal shift penalty or whatever. And it's just, and then it's like, I got over that. It's like, okay, we're fine. We can still score here. We can still put the game away. And then the very next play, Will Levis gets ball knocked out and he fumbles. So it's it was, I can't imagine a more deflating way to lose. I mean, it was just, I'm definitely still not over it, and that one's gonna sting for a while. So.
No, I agree with you. John Roberts, he's on Twitter. Most people know him as Drink Local Beham on Twitter. So if I call him that, Coleman, you'll know who I'm talking about.
Okay.
All right. So John, your thoughts on the UK game. Did you watch any of it?
I did. It looked like, I was actually surprised with how well UK was able to hang in there with Ole Miss. I felt like Ole Miss, we talked about it in the previous shows where I thought that Ole Miss would start kind of running away with it and maybe control the game from start to finish, but not necessarily have a massive blowout.
Right.
But and then Kentucky kept it inside the number, and then had multiple chances to win, and then right there at the end where you had the fumble and then just not able to get the score at the end of the game. So yeah, but overall it looked like Kentucky had played well enough for most of the game to win it.
Right.
So yeah.
So I'm going to give some thoughts, Coleman, and some of this may sound a little harsh, but like you said, the old Kentucky football. So we've made tremendous strides, and in a game like yesterday with Ole Miss, I actually believe that we were the better team. Don't you?
Oh yeah, we no doubt we were definitely the better team. And I don't think Ole Miss played bad though. I think we actually got Ole Miss's best shot, and it's not like we were only going to win the game because Ole Miss handed it to us. I mean, I know Lane Kiffin went for it down there on 4th down and their own in the red zone there in the 4th quarter and gave us an opportunity, but it's not like they just handed us the game. And I think we were definitely the better team. And obviously we didn't play our best, and we still were really like a tenth of a second from winning. I mean, if Will Levis had snapped the ball a tenth of a second later and let Barryon Brown get set on that illegal shift, then we win the game and we're undefeated and maybe top 5.
Well, but there's so many other things in that game, and I've been preaching this for a while. We don't play clean. And
we don't.
And I don't understand, like Mark Stoops' teams have always kind of, I don't know. I mean, they do really well with it. And then at times in certain games each year, we always have a game or two that it comes up and bites us.
That's always how it is. And Mark Stoops teams usually play fundamental football, sound fundamental football really well. And, Stoops had a quote after last game, after the Northern Illinois game, that he's tired of being pissed off after a win.
Right.
And I thought he was going to be saying that again after this game. Like, if we had won that game, I would still feel like, okay, we've been through 5 games now, and we haven't played well, I don't think, in any of them, and we're 5-0. Well, now we're 4-1, and we haven't played well in any game. But yeah, I feel like we leave so much on the field every game, even in the shutout against Youngstown.
Yeah, I mean, we are, missing or having extra points blocked. We can't snap, when it comes to field goals. We had the safety in the end zone that we gave them 2 points on. We missed a 39-yard field goal yesterday. All of these things on top of what you were talking about with the fumbles. There was a very questionable late hit on one of those fumbles, or not a late hit, but a targeting hit. A targeting hit on one of those fumbles that, I mean, to be quite honest with you, it's clear. I mean, it's helmet to helmet, and he's a quarterback. And I don't understand. The quarterbacks are supposed to be protected. And I don't understand why Levis is getting leveled in some of these hits, and
he was a runner on that one. He was a runner on that play.
Yeah,
that's why he doesn't fall under the protection.
But he gets hit clearly, helmet to helmet, in the head.
He lowered his head. He lowered his head and initiated the contact. That's why they didn't call it.
Yeah, and it was.
That was the reason. I know what play you're talking about, and he lowered his head and initiated the contact, and he was a runner. He was a runner, so he's not as protected as the other ones, and that's why they didn't call that one.
But if a wide receiver does that, if a wide receiver catches a ball and then lowers his head, and somebody lays the wood to the wide receiver, they call it all day long.
Only if it's Smoke Monday. That's it. I'm just kidding.
It's just true. I see it all the time. They throw the flag and they call it all day long.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, look, they haven't been consistent with calling it, but that particular play was a ball. I mean, Levis, while a quarterback, was a runner in that play, and then lowered his head. And generally, because they don't call it when the running back does it, so they generally aren't going to call it when any sort of ball carrier does it. So,
and it was hard to see, like live, right?
But
like
they
during
should
the
have done a replay.
Yeah, well, and they did, and that's the thing that maybe should have happened is, the booth can call down for a review if they think they saw targeting, and they chose even on the instant replay, and they chose not to do that. So I think it should have been looked at. It was, even though it was hard to see live. I mean, it was clearly like the definition of targeting, because I know that Levis lowered his helmet, but the Ole Miss defender led with the crown of his helmet, and I thought that was like the definition of targeting. Like, if you lead with the crown of your helmet, then I thought it was targeting. And
I don't know how it's not.
But, regardless, I mean, it was definitely a missed call. And if it had gone our way, Ole Miss would say it was a cheap call. Well, I think we could say that the illegal shift was kind of a cheap call. I mean, that was like really close. Like I said, it was like a tenth of a second. So, and it didn't even affect, Dane Key wasn't even the one that wasn't set, so It didn't even really affect the play. So I think that was kind of a cheap call too. So football's a game of it's a game of breaks, and the breaks certainly didn't fall our way this week. Almost everything fell Ole Miss's way. So
right, and my thing is this. I'm going to say a couple of things here. I'm not completely sold on Scangarello as the offensive coordinator yet.
Yeah, I'm not either. I wish that weren't the case, but I'm not
I mean,
sold
we're
either.
5 games in, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I don't like him or he's not the one. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying through 5 games in, there's some stuff that are questionable that I think, and some play calls that, I mean, we just don't look like the same team that we were with Liam Cohen last year. Do you agree with that?
I absolutely agree with that. And early on or like before the season, it would have been easy to say, well, we don't have Wan'Dale Robinson, but I think we clearly have threats at wideout. So I don't think that's quite the reason. I don't think, some of the play calls are kind of questionable
And then
at best.
And my second thing that I'm going to say is I'm definitely not sold on the offensive line coach and the way things are
Yeah.
looking on the offensive line. Now, like Kentucky for the last 4 or 5 years have been one of the leaders in the country, to be quite honest with you, with our offensive line and the way that they blocked. And this year, I mean, it's like we're trying to get Levis killed, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And that last play, a big part of the end of the game was Jeremy Flax went down with cramps. I know everybody thought that he was faking it, but that was an actual cramp if you like saw what was going on TV. And evidenced by the fact that he wasn't in the game and David Wallabaugh had to come in the game.
Right.
He's who kind of with the tackle that led to the Will Levis fumble. And I know that, it ultimately, I know that him whiffing the tackle didn't help, but like Will still can't put the ball on the ground. Like even if you're, like you just got to take the sack in that situation. Like you can't put your like arm up to where it's vulnerable like that. Like I feel like at that point when the pocket collapsed, like he had to just take the sack and live to see another down.
Right.
Like the one thing you can't do in that situation is turn the ball over. Like literally anything else could happen, and we turn the ball over. So.
Right. All right, so we're 4-1, and on to next week. So, you have to live with it. So, all right, so John Roberts, that's on with us, he's an Auburn fan. So, I want to hear your thoughts on the Auburn LSU game last night, John.
It looked very much like a typical Auburn game. That's what it looked like. Under the Brian Harsin era, there's been, I believe, 5 or 6 games where Auburn has had a 14
Plus
point
lead,
or more
yeah,
lead in the first quarter or first half. That has in the second half has gone away, where we've lost the game, where Auburn has lost the game. And generally, in the second half of those games, Auburn scores maybe 3 to 7 points total in those games.
right.
So,
I mean, Auburn was a 17 and nothing lead last night, and
correct,
looked
17
like
nothing.
and looked like in the second quarter that that they were at least going to be able to get the game down to the end and possibly still have a lead and have a chance.
Right, and the last score that Auburn had came with, I believe, 9:38 to go in the second quarter,
Right,
and they did not score beyond that moment. The real turnaround was the sack, fumble, scoop, and score right there deep in the Auburn territory, where I can't remember exactly who the LSU defensive lineman that came around the corner and hit Ashford, knocked the ball loose. Ball was picked up, I think, right around the 10 or so yard line and ran in for a touchdown. At that point, uh, Auburn was really unable to put any sort of effective drive together until in the second half. I think they got down into deep into territory and turned it over with the Coy Moore little trick play where Coy Moore ended up trying to throw the pass and he was getting pulled down or getting hit as he threw it, and went right to an LSU defender, turned the ball over. The last, I don't know, maybe 10 minutes of the game, it just looked like the ball was just, nobody really wanted to win the game. LSU couldn't put Auburn away, and Auburn could never put, points on the board, get points or get close enough to put points on the board in order to, actually make a comeback.
Right.
So,
Coleman, did you get to catch any of that game?
I did catch some of that game, and actually, my roommate here in Baton Rouge is on the coaching staff at LSU, so I was watching some of the first half, and as we all know, Auburn was handling their business, and I thought I thought my roommate was going to come home and we were going to talk about how much it sucks to go on the road and lose, but I don't know how LSU won that game. If you look at the stats, it doesn't scream that LSU would have won the game either. I mean, Jaden Daniels had 80 yards passing.
LSU kind of struggled too, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he was 8 for 20. Yeah, it's just, I mean, looking at the stats, like, I don't know how LSU won this game, right? I mean, I don't know. LSU's they're kind of like Kentucky in that I don't think that they really played well in any of their games, and they're 4-1.
Right.
So
they definitely didn't play well enough to win it. Auburn has the stats to say, like, we should win this, that Auburn should win this game. I mean, if you look at it, I mean, yes, what you said, Jaden Daniels and Nussmeier together combined for 10 for 26 for 85 yards.
yeah, that is
10 for 26
won
for
the game
85
somehow.
yards. And Robbie Ashford was 19 of 38, so he's about, what, 50%?
Right.
50%. That is actually dead on 50%.
It is.
For 337 yards, 2 touchdowns, and an INT.
Right. And you would think that Auburn would win that with those kind of stats.
But here is the kicker, all right? The best 2 players on the field are Tank Bigsby and Jarquez Hunter. Those are the best 2 guys on offense.
Right.
Tank got 12 carries and I believe caught 4 passes. And half the passes, Robbie Ashford that they weren't great passes where Tank's either having to jump to catch it, turn his body to catch the ball, whatever it is, it slows his momentum down. And then immediately he's having to dodge 4 or 5,
right.
different would-be tacklers and only, struggling to get to the line of scrimmage, which is pretty much typical of any sort of game with Tank. Again, because the offensive line struggles, and while the offensive line did better in this game, still nowhere near the where they should be, especially for an SEC team or an SEC West team. So they're not going to fare too great, against any team that legitimately has a pulse.
Right.
And
well, Coleman's going to LSU, so I'm sure he was paying attention. I figured he was.
I was paying attention. Auburn had 438 total yards of offense. LSU had 270. Auburn had 337 yards passing, and LSU, as we said, had 85. So
right.
Don't know how Auburn lost that game.
Again, there was well, let's see. LSU won the turnover battle. I believe it was 4 turnovers to 1.
Right.
Yep, that was it.
4 to 1. That usually it's insanely hard for a team to win the game while losing the turnover battle.
Especially if it's more than 1. If it's more than plus 1.
In the 3 wins that Auburn has, I believe they have lost the turnover battle in all 3 of them.
Right.
They've only turned the other team over twice in the first 4 games, or first 5 games.
5, yeah.
First 5 games, they've turned over the opposing team twice. Once last week, once against LSU. That's it.
All right.
They
So the elephant in the room yesterday was the Georgia-Missouri game. What are y'all's thoughts? We'll start with you, John. What's your thoughts on that game?
well, Georgia had one of those games where they didn't play well. They seemed to be out of sync in the first half, definitely. And Mizzou's defense is what kept them in it. And I mean, look, their defense has been pretty good anyway, or pretty decent. It's the offense that just is not great. And they were, it seemed like that they were even the punches that they were able to land, they didn't seem like they were hitting as hard as they could have. They were, scoring, uh, kicking field goals instead
Right.
of scoring touchdowns. And I
Right.
think that's what was ultimately
Downfall.
their downfall was that. And it looked like also that Georgia had a lot of frustration on the sidelines as well. They seemed to be getting in each other's faces. But I think after halftime, um, I believe Stetson Bennett kind of took over and led his team with just by getting with every single player, every offensive lineman, every skill position player, and getting, and I think calming everybody down, and they eventually were able to pull it out at the end, and that's just one of those survive and advance games
Right.
for Georgia.
Coleman, what'd you think about the way Georgia had to come from behind to beat Missouri?
Well, I think it came down to Missouri had the X's and O's, but Georgia had the Jimmies and Joes there at the end. Like you could really see how Georgia just took over like physically and was able to run the ball at will on Missouri in the fourth quarter, and they were just able to put the game away and go down the field and score. Um, I think Missouri had a great game plan coming in. Um, I think Eli Drinkwitz was on point with his play calling for a lot of the game, which I think he does have a really great offensive mind, and I mean they had it teed up for him there, and it really came down to, like I said, Georgia being able to have the dudes to make plays there at the end of the game, and then Missouri wasn't able to turn field goals into touchdowns, and they were able to move the ball, but they weren't able to put up 7. They had to settle for 3. So ultimately, that cost them the game.
Right.
So I was hoping for them. I was hoping for Missouri to pull that out because man, that would have helped Kentucky. I think
that
that
absolutely
nothing would
helped
make
Kentucky.
nothing would have helped. Would have made yesterday okay, but that would have come pretty close if Georgia lost.
Right. I agree with that as a Kentucky fan. Now,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that I wouldn't pull for Georgia at certain times, but I'm just saying in the East that would have been a help.
Yes,
Yeah.
it would have.
Yeah.
But that being said, I kind of thought it was a fluke that Georgia struggled against Kent State last week, but now seeing them struggle like they did against Missouri, I mean, they look very beatable. Like the fact that we have them in Lexington later this year, I think we can run with them, and
If we can put together a good clean game, I think that we
yeah.
can.
But I think undoubtedly the toughest game left on Kentucky's schedule is at Tennessee.
Yeah, I'm
I
going to agree with you on that one too.
didn't think that would be the case coming into this season, but I think that's definitely the case now. So
Yeah. So a couple of other games, that the Mississippi State Texas A&M game kind of went the way I expected the game to go, but at the same time, it's really kind of surprising to see Texas A&M just be quite so dreadful.
yeah,
And what's y'all's thoughts on that?
I think Mike Leach is just he's an interesting guy. I can't really feel. I feel like his teams either like lay a total egg or just blow a
They
team
do.
out.
They do.
I can't. I can't figure it out. I mean, at LSU they laid a total egg.
They did,
right?
exactly, a couple of weeks ago.
I don't get it. I don't. Mississippi State is either really bad or really good on any given Saturday, and there's no in between.
You're exactly right, and they're so hard to judge and figure out which team is going to show up.
Yeah, it is, and I guess that's the air raid offense, right? I mean, that's what it is. I mean, it either works or it doesn't.
Right.
There's no in between. So,
John Roberts, what do you say about what's going on at Texas A&M?
Well, the offense is the worst in the SEC.
Absolutely. So, I mean, the numbers prove it.
And as we were talking about in the previous two episodes, the previous two podcasts, that it was that I sat there and said, look, this is going to be, it's going to be a blowout going the against A&M. That
you did call that one.
Yeah, I said Mississippi State's is going to absolutely have their way with A&M, and it took a while, but then all of a sudden, I think it was the fourth quarter where they just kind of blew it up on them.
Right.
And but yeah, it was exactly what I thought it would be, and that was that Mississippi State was going to be able to score a lot of points, and then A&M just isn't able to move the ball, and they're just not able to do. I don't know why. They got supposed to have the greatest recruiting class ever.
Yeah.
And paid them all this money.
Got in transfers.
Could these guys want? They got LSU quarterback.
Yeah.
Can't do anything with them. Got the quarterback that they had before. Can't, highly touted 5-star guy. Can't do anything with them.
I've never really understood what people see in Max Johnson, because, I got to watch him quite a bit. He was at LSU last year, of course, and
right.
He just has never looked comfortable in the pocket, and I don't really understand what people see in him necessarily.
Right. And it just, I don't know. I mean, they just seem very bland. And that's.
So
I feel like they should be able to do well with having guys like an A-Chain and, stuff like that. I mean, Anaya Smith, I think, is now gone. They've lost him for the year.
I think they've lost him for the year, yeah.
Right. But before, I mean, he should have been lighting it up, prior to the injury. And so I don't understand why they're not able to put up points. I don't understand.
So
but it makes for good comedy.
Coleman, what do you think this all means for Jimbo? Is he on the hot seat?
Well, I mean, what have they really done since Jimbo has been at A&M? I mean, that's the best record. Isn't that the best record they've had?
They may have been a 10-win the one year where they supposedly thought that they should have been in the playoffs.
But yeah, 8-4. I mean, if they haven't fired him yet, what's it going to take? Kind of thing.
Auburn would have gotten rid of him immediately.
Yeah, I think. Which
he's been there 6 years? Is he 6 years now, or is it longer?
Feels like longer.
Let me think. I don't know if is it that long?
I think so. I'm not exactly sure, but I'm not sitting here and looking at it and looking it up. I'm doing that off the top of my head.
Right.
Hey, how about this stat? Texas A&M had 3 penalties for 24 yards. Mississippi State had 13 penalties for 138 yards.
And still won the game.
Still won the game by.
And still clobbered them.
Scores. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So nationally, I'll tell you a game that surprised me was the Oklahoma TCU game. It was just a big surprise. I mean, Oklahoma was coming off a struggle loss, and I just thought that, they would come in and at least show a lot better than what they did. And, I thought that was a game national wise that just, it was pretty telltale against Oklahoma. And, do they? I haven't seen the polls all the way down. I know Kentucky fell to 13 in the coaches poll, but I didn't see if Oklahoma stayed in the poll or not. But that was a beating that says maybe they shouldn't be ranked.
Yeah, and who did Oklahoma lose to last week? I forget.
Kansas State.
Oh, that's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
Another purple team.
Another purple team. Those are two back-to-back pretty bad losses there. I think Texas A&M and Oklahoma should play, and the coach should be fired at a ceremony at midfield after the game. So yeah, those are two.
That was LSU versus Auburn a couple of years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Loser of the game is going to lose their coach.
But yeah, I mean, I think TCU might be better than people think, but they're not 55-24.
I don't see how they're 55-24 better than Oklahoma. Yeah.
So, yeah, that I don't know what's going on there, but can't imagine it's going to work out very long. So, who's there now? Who's the
Brent Venables?
Brent Venables.
Yeah.
Defensive guru giving up 55 points.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Man, is Bob Stoops still like in some administrative position with Oklahoma?
He's got some kind of solid. He's still there. Yes. Yeah.
No. Here's the issue. Brent Venables, defensive coordinator. Do you know who that is? Do y'all know who it is off the top of your head? Because I know who it is.
What do you mean? I mean, he was the Clemson, and he also was he also was Oklahoma's defensive coordinator as well.
No, I'm talking about the defensive coordinator for Brent Venables.
Oh, you mean like currently?
Yes.
No, I do not know who he hired as the defensive coordinator.
Ted Leaking Roof. Ted Roof. Is
Leaking
Ted Roof. I call him a leaky roof because his defenses are god awful. I absolutely dislike Ted Roof's defenses. And he was the defensive coordinator when Auburn won the national championship back in 2010.
Oh, really?
The only reason why those defenses won or did anything was because you had a Nick Fairley at D-line, just a man-child on the D-line, and you had Josh Bynes as just a leader for the defense. They were very much a bend, but just didn't quite break. But he had better dudes in that. I mean, there than I guess he has at Oklahoma. But I've never been a fan of what Ted Roof has ever done.
Yeah.
And so that was the first thing. As soon as I found out that Ted Roof was the defensive coordinator, I went, there's your problem.
At least he's not as bad as Gene Chizik.
Well, look, Gene Chizik took over the defense from Roof.
Right.
Basically just said, nah, man, you're done. And then he took it over. And then the next year he hired somebody else. And I think that was when they went 3-9, and Chizik was pretty much, on his way out the door. But yeah.
Right.
Now in 11, I think Gene Chizik took over the defense at the end of the year, and I think relieved Ted Roof before the bowl game.
Well, Coleman, I know you have another thing that you're supposed to do here in just a little bit, so I don't know if you need to jump off or not. But
I got a few more minutes.
Okay. I know that you said that you still had something to do, so I wanted to ask.
Yeah, for sure.
So national wise, what did you think of some of the games yesterday?
The Clemson NC State game was not as exciting as I hoped it would be, probably. Neither was Alabama Arkansas.
No, we haven't discussed that one, but Alabama won that pretty handily, and Bryce got hurt. So
yeah.
Remember what I said about that game too.
Yeah. I hear you.
Going to be exactly that way too. I'm only going to tell you when I was right. That one I was right on.
I think Michigan is very beatable though. I mean, they almost lost. I guess they didn't almost lose, but they very easily could have lost to Maryland last week.
Right.
And then They could have lost to Iowa this week. I mean, Iowa's not good. Like they can't put.
They have a great defense. They're just not a good
Yeah.
overall team because they have no offense.
Yeah, they have like no offense. So,
Right.
yeah. And so
Yeah,
put
when
up.
it takes Iowa 3 scores to score 7 points, that is definitely no offense.
Yeah.
So I mean, you talk about nationally. I think, that Georgia, Alabama, and Ohio State coming into this week, I think they're like the 3 teams. And then
Head
that
and
4
they're
spot in the playoff is wide open.
yeah. I mean, those are the 3 teams that I think are head and shoulders above everybody else.
And well, now Georgia might not even be that head and shoulders above everybody else. Who knows? I
Right.
mean,
Well,
they
they
got,
got next week to get right against Auburn. They'll get right against Auburn.
Against Auburn.
They'll absolutely blow the doors off of Auburn, and everybody will be like, "Oh, there's that team," and they'll
Yeah,
get
they're
right,
back.
and
They're back
they'll
Sunday.
start blowing everybody else up after that.
So Coleman,
That's what
I
happens.
did see that Kentucky dropped to 13 in the coaches poll before we come
Mhm.
on, which, you know, I was kind of afraid they would drop even further. So 13
Yeah.
is kind of a good number, I think. It does mean that they still have a chance to make some noise over the next 4 weeks. I mean, we play South Carolina, we got Mississippi State at home, Tennessee, Georgia. So, I mean, if Kentucky could take care of business and clean up their act a little bit, and the 2 things that's bothering me the most is the offensive line and just the turnovers and the, you know, like snaps and, block field goals. And, I mean, Ruffalo's been a great kicker, and yesterday he missed a 39-yarder.
I don't know if it was in his head because I mean he was our kicker last time we lost to Ole Miss when we missed the extra point, and that's the
Yes.
reason that we lost. And I think it was just I don't know what it is. He's been Mr. Consistent lately, and it was just a total disaster. So I've got to think that was a mental lapse. But I mean one of them was a snapping issue, right?
It was. One of them was a snapping issue, yes. Yeah.
But then the other 2 kicks were definitely kind of a mental thing. But yeah, we got to get that cleaned up. But hey, I mean, if you take care of business these next 2 weeks against South Carolina, Mississippi State, both at home, which are 2 very winnable games, and then if you were to go into Tennessee and win, the Ole Miss game becomes totally irrelevant because you're right where you wanted to be going in to probably play Georgia for the East, right?
Right.
So because you beat Florida, you could lose this game, which that's the good thing about getting that Florida win is, you have a freebie, for lack of a better word. It just sucks because like it was right there for the taking and we could be 5-0. But in the grand scheme of things, I don't think this game matters as much as people really think or feel right now.
Well, this game will only matter if we go lay an egg against Tennessee or we lay an egg at home against Mississippi State.
Yeah. Well, and I think, Tennessee barely beat. I mean, we played Florida better than Tennessee did.
I think so, yes.
At Florida. And
Right.
I don't know if, Florida's figured something out or something, or just had a good game I don't know. But, the fact that we held Anthony Richardson to 4 yards rushing, I don't think was a fluke. I mean, I think our defense can handle Tennessee. But, what bothered me, I guess, the most about the Ole Miss game is how they were able to move the ball through the air against us. I did not expect that. I thought our secondary would be able to handle them better. And I know they didn't have like a crazy day, but they still threw for almost 300 yards on us. Like, yeah, didn't think that would have happened.
Right. Yeah, because they had been basically rushing the ball for like 260 yards a game or something before Saturday.
Well, and Brad White's that bend don't break defense, like doesn't typically give up big plays, and we gave up quite a few big plays. So we got to get that fixed before we go into Tennessee. But, I think you're still in a good spot to get right these next 2 weeks and go into Tennessee and play for a win there. So.
Yeah, I mean,
I actually have the AP Top 25
okay.
if you guys
Okay.
are interested.
Heck yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so number 25, LSU, 24, Cincinnati, 23, Mississippi State, 22, Syracuse, 21, Washington, 20, K-State, 19, Kansas, 18, UCLA, 17, TCU, 16, BYU, 15, Wake Forest, 14, NC State, 13, Kentucky, 12, Oregon, 11, Utah, 10, Penn State, 9, Ole Miss, 8, Tennessee, 7, Oklahoma State, 6, USC, 5, Clemson, 4, Michigan, 3, Ohio State, 2, Georgia,
Georgia
1,
dropped.
Bama.
Yeah. Georgia dropped in the coaches poll as well. They dropped from
Yeah.
1 to 2.
That's right
Yep.
where I thought we'd be in the poll, like Kentucky. I think I thought we'd be 11, 12, 13, somewhere in there.
Well, I was kind of afraid that we would drop to 15 to 18, to be honest with you, because, Kentucky doesn't garner enough respect yet in the football world, I don't think, most of the time. So we tend to drop a little more than some programs would, in my opinion. I'm going to say out of all of that, one of the teams, and I know they handled Auburn a couple of weeks ago, but Penn State yesterday, I mean, they beat Northwestern 17-7.
Yeah.
And and it's Northwestern. And, and I mean, I just don't see how they climbed in the top 10 in both polls.
This isn't a good Northwestern team. This isn't one of those where the North team that could possibly, beat one of the bigger programs. No, that's not this program. That's not this Northwestern team. This is a bad Northwestern team.
It is, and they just barely. I mean, they survived, beat them 17-7 yesterday, and it's just really unimpressive. And I just don't see how. I mean, I know they handled Auburn a couple of weeks ago, at Jordan Hare, and that's their most impressive win so far, really.
Right, which really shouldn't be that impressive. I mean, honestly, it's not that impressive.
Yeah, I mean, I don't feel like it is. Is that an impressive enough win for them to be a top 10 team?
No.
I don't think it is.
But it goes to show how kind of wide open things really are this year. So,
yeah.
I mean, there's definitely one spot in the playoff that's up for grabs right now, maybe two, depending on how, if Georgia keeps not looking so great and drops a game to Tennessee or Kentucky.
They'd have to drop a game and then get beat even in the, they would have to make it to the championship game and get beat.
To not be in it.
So that means that,
they would have to lose twice.
Yeah.
And I think that's very plausible, though.
Right.
But Kansas, you'd say Kansas is 19th?
So Kansas is 19th, K-State is 20th. So the two Kansas schools.
That kind of surprises me about Kansas. I mean, I know they're 5-0, but they haven't played anybody and they haven't played well, really. So I don't think they'll be in there long. But
yeah, even this past, Iowa State probably should have beat them.
Yeah, 14-11. I mean,
yeah.
But game day's going there next week.
Yeah, is that true? Game day is going to Kansas?
Yep, first time ever.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, I seen a little meme thing, picture of it, but I didn't know if somebody made it up or not.
No, it's real.
Okay.
Yeah, so playing TCU, 2 undefeated teams there.
Right.
So, but hey, a hot take I wanted to give before I get off here. But before the season started, on kind of our season predictions on Talkin Kentucky,
right?
I said that I thought Colorado would go 0-12. And I just wanted to say they're 0-5 to start the season. So I have a lot of I'm a graduate of Colorado. Actually, I went there for my master's, and I have a lot of Colorado friends that are mad at me for that one. But I got to say I'm right so far. So we're almost halfway through the season now, and they're 0-5. So if they win a game, it'll be against Arizona State, but I don't even think they'll win that one. So we'll see how long this 0-12 Colorado hype can keep going for me.
Well, Coleman, I really do appreciate you coming on with us today. I know that me and you have kind of talked back and forth, and we've been trying to get on. You wanted me to come on your show too sometime, so
Heck yeah.
we'll try to get that hooked up before too long as well. And I just want to say how much I appreciate you coming on our show. Please like and share this, and we'll do the same for you. And I just appreciate it, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on. And yeah, we'll have to get you on Talkin Kentucky soon, and we'll have to get some Auburn takes from John on the podcast too. So yeah.
All right, man.
Auburn. Yeah. All right. Cool. Well, thanks guys. Thanks for having me.
You have a great day,
Oh, yeah.
Coleman.
You too.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, John, is there any other game that you want to talk about from over the weekend before we jump off here?
Let's see. We've lightly touched on the Alabama game. We touched on the Auburn game. Touched on the Kentucky game. A little bit of Oklahoma, Clemson, K-State. They beat up. Who did they beat up? They beat up Texas Tech, right? That was the Texas Tech
they
game.
beat Texas Tech.
That one. Okay. I was trying to remember the
Oklahoma
games.
State handled Baylor, and that's one of the games that I was kind of debating on. Y'all went with Baylor, and
Baylor.
I think I kind of wound up going with Baylor, even though I was thinking Oklahoma State. But you know, it was a double-digit win, and Oklahoma State I think is now number 7 in both polls. So, you know, they still have a very good shot at a playoff spot as well.
Right, and I think the Michigan-Iowa game, I thought that it would stay inside the number. Still thought Michigan would win, but I thought Iowa would keep it inside the number, and I think Michigan was able to get outside the 10.5.
Yeah, it was
whatever
like 10
it was.
and a half. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I was like, well, darn.
Right, yeah.
On that one. And
one of the games that I want to touch on that wasn't, you know, I mean, we didn't even talk about it on our Game Day Pick'em show. USC played Arizona State.
Yeah.
And Arizona State is really not that great of a team. Matter of fact, before Coleman got off, he was saying that Colorado may have a shot at beating Arizona State.
Right.
You know, this year. And Arizona, there's 2 teams out there, Arizona and Arizona State. And Arizona State's kind of in a mess. They fired Herm Edwards, you know, a couple of weeks back now. And, you know, they scored 25 points against USC on Saturday night late. I know USC won by like 16 or 17. It was like 41-25 or 42-25.
Yeah, 42-25.
But, you know, I'm just not, you know, their defense, they're great on offense. I'm just not sold that when they play a solid team that USC is a number 6 team in the country yet. That's just my opinion.
Right. I think it's just that everybody is just wanting to get, I guess, the whole Lincoln Riley effect and everything like that, just wanting to hype them up, and them being undefeated still allows them to do that. But I don't know if they've actually beaten somebody that's worth it yet, you know.
Yeah.
To really talk about it. And they'll play next week they got Wazoo, and then they get Utah in 2 weeks.
Right. And that'll really be their first real challenge.
And it'll be at Utah too. So
Right.
that one will be a true test.
Yeah.
And then we did one other one was the Pac-12 After Dark, and you had Oregon against Stanford. Oregon basically did the same thing what USC did to Arizona State.
They did.
So, yep. So
and
it looked like it took a
gave
little
up
bit,
about
but
24, 25, 26 points or whatever it was, something like that, right?
yeah, 45-27.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it looked like for a little while that it kind of stayed slightly close, and then there was, I believe, a turnover and a quick touchdown. I think they had two touchdowns that were within, I think, 23 seconds of game clock, and that's what kind of spurred on Oregon to kind of start running away with it at that point. And that was early on. That was I believe it was in the second quarter when Oregon scored 21 points in the second quarter, and I think that was part of that. So
Right.
they allowed Stanford to score 14 in the third and 10 in the fourth quarter. So 24 of their 27 were scored in the second half.
Yeah.
And
I mean, that's
not
the
really
one thing
sure.
about
Yeah.
Kentucky that's been impressive to me so far. I mean, in the second half, I mean, even, Saturday, I mean, we hold them. And I mean, hardly anybody's been scoring on us in the second half. And we did the same thing on Saturday, had plenty of opportunities, and really, I felt like should have won that game, but we just beat ourselves,
Right. Right.
you know. Trying to think, though, we had a little talk on our pick six and no fly zone show over the week, last week, about Washington, and you were totally right. I mean, just you were right about they were going to slip up and lose one of these games.
I said they would lose one of them, and I think I was looking a little further into the future, not necessarily the
UCLA
CLA,
game.
because I think the pick'em game, I think I picked Washington to win,
Yeah.
and but in the in the Tuesday episode, I did say that they would slip up at one of these games and lose, and then that's when we had the whole discussion that the Pac-12 is the top two teams and not necessarily two divisions. Because y'all were talking about, well, they could lose to Oregon and still get in, or they could lose the game and still get in. I'm
Well, I
like, well,
mean,
hold
now
on,
I'm sitting here
not
saying if they're
necessarily.
going to lose to UCLA,
Yeah,
then you're right. I mean, they're not going to make it through, you know,
yeah,
a couple of other games minus,
right,
some of the better teams as well. So,
right, yeah,
I thought, they might have a shot of, winning two or three of these upcoming games
right,
and then saying, okay, maybe they have a chance, but it just didn't pan out that way. So,
right, right.
yeah.
Yeah, that was like I said, I thought I felt like they could lose one of these games upcoming. Just didn't necessarily think it was going to be the next game.
Right.
Yeah.
So we've got Chris Wilson that looks like has joined the room. Says, good afternoon, BDS and drink local BHAM in a comment. Do you see that?
Yes, I see it.
I don't know if it's somebody that you know.
I do not know Chris.
Okay.
So
I just thought we'll say hi to Chris Wilson.
what's
Um,
up?
looks like he's made a comment. So just wanted to say hello and thanks for joining the show. We have discussed most of the games. This coming week, there's Georgia and Auburn, play this coming week. Kentucky gets to go back home and play South Carolina, which should be a kind of a warm up game, to be honest with you. I feel like at home it should be anyway. Um, so um, you guys got a tough game with the Georgia.
Yes, we do. That one at Georgia. Let's see. The Auburn has not won at Georgia since 2005, and that was a bit of a miracle victory that year. Um, Georgia and Auburn around that time was a very close series, and now has swung heavily into Georgia's favor. The scoring, it was so close that the scoring was almost the same at one point in time, where it was dead even, wins and losses, and then the amount of points scored in the game. But again, that's since heavily swung to Georgia. Georgia's just got the dudes, and they've got better scheme. They've got better everything. There isn't a point, there isn't anything that Auburn can sit there and say, we've got a better this than Georgia does. It's just, there's not really anything. I mean, you
I
could sit
think
there and say
Auburn has a couple of guys on defense that's probably going to play on Sunday next year, probably.
that may be, but I mean, there's still going to be, there's still going to be some guys that play, but it's just overall, there's not really anything that Auburn's going to have that just seems like it's going to be a lot better than
what Georgia
if
did.
Auburn, if Auburn had Eli Drinkwitz's scheme, then maybe they're able to do, because they had the better players than Missouri. Maybe they would have been able to do something, but they don't even have that. So it's just going to be I just don't see it being anywhere close, especially since it's on the road.
So Coleman was talking about how Mississippi State is up and down, and you never know what you're going to get. That's also true with Missouri every single week.
Right.
Missouri, they can play really well, like they did against Georgia yesterday, and just come up short by kicking field goals and not really getting to punch it into the end zone a few times, and then they can look like they did and finish a game the way they did against Auburn the week before. They played, was it Kansas State that they played and got killed like 42-14?
Let's see. They,
I want to say it was Kansas State, like the week 2 or 3.
K-State.
Yeah.
K-State beat them September 10th. Just walloped them 40-12.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so they come out and they play a game like that, and then they show like they did against Georgia, and you just never know what you're going to get when you see Missouri come out and play.
Right. And so, next week they're at Florida, right? Yep. At Florida. And that's going to be, that could be an interesting game. It's at 11. They could make it close, or they could get their, rear end kicked on this one.
Yeah.
So.
I think it could be a really good game. It could be. But if Missouri comes out and plays flat, even last week against Auburn, the game was honestly a miserable game to watch, to be honest.
Right.
And then the way they ended the game, missing, I don't know, a 32-yard field goal, whatever it was. It was a chip shot, basically, and missing it. And then, the way it ended, trying to stretch out and everything. It was just a crazy ending. And Auburn winds up winning the game that they should have won.
Nope, should not have won that game. That was a game that, I felt like that was I put it to the analogy of, watching, say, the national championship, whether it's last year or whether it was the 2017 season where it was Alabama and Georgia. Okay, these are two of Auburn's biggest rivals, and they're playing each other for the national championship. And if you ask an Auburn fan, who would you rather see? And they would probably say they'd rather see nobody win. Well, that game against Missouri was one of those. Nobody won. Nobody won that game. Both teams were just trying to give it away. And it just looked like Missouri did a better job of giving the game away.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
So the East now, Tennessee's not lost, Georgia's not lost. And, right this minute, it's going to look like that it's going to go through one of them two teams. Kentucky is not out of it. They still have enough games and just lost the one. If they could run through and get Tennessee, then they're still right there and could beat Georgia and still have a shot. But, Georgia's not looked like Georgia the last 2 weeks,
Right.
So like you said, they're going to go to Auburn. You think they'll get all the kinks worked out and look like Georgia again?
Yeah, I think Auburn will, when Auburn goes to Athens. That game is in Athens. That I think Georgia will work out whatever their kinks are, because it'd be just like a scrimmage for them. They'll get to be able to beat the snot out of Auburn and be over by halftime. It'll be one of those, like, playing a non-Power 5 school. They just kind of just whip them up front and whip them all day.
Right.
So,
Well, all right. We have done this for a little bit over an hour, so we're probably going to be wrapping this up. I just want to add that we'll probably do a couple of our shows this week that we've been doing with the Pick Six and the No Fly Zone segments show that we've been posting on Tuesdays, and then our Game Day Pick'em show that we either post Thursday night or Friday. So we'll probably have those. John Hammonds will be back on with us. He was doing some stuff with his dad today and didn't get to come on. Looks like we'll have somebody else that's joined the room. Does that say Zakes?
Zakes.
Uh-huh.
I'm not going to attempt the last name.
Yeah, I'm not going to attempt the last name either. I'm sorry. Yeah, he says hi. So
yeah, I see that.
Yeah. Hey, man, I appreciate you joining our show. We're about to wrap it up. We've been on for a little over an hour, but I will post this show. So anybody that's come on, y'all feel free to download and take a listen. And we did have a guest on our show today from his own podcast. It's called Talkin Kentucky, and they do a lot of sports stuff, but they also do some fun stuff and have some fun topics and stuff on their show, and have a little humor and stuff in their show as well. So y'all catch that, and catch Coleman Scott with Talkin Kentucky, and also catch us with Ball Down South Sports Wave, and we appreciate it. John, you have anything you want to end with?
I believe that is it. We'll see what happens next week.
All right. We will catch y'all next week. Thank you.
All right. See you.